Hi everyone and welcome to another edition of Founders Friday. Today I have two very dear founders, co-founders of Indus Valley, and it's one of our most interesting companies that we had invested in. This was during COVID, and times weren't so good. And we reached out to Jagadeesh, and he was not so keen to sort of have a conversation. But we'll get a little bit more into that story. So I've got Jagadeesh with me and Madhumita, the two co-founders of Indus Valley. Hi guys.
Hi,
Great to have you guys.
Hi Archana.
Very happy to
be here.
Yeah. So the story. Why were you being, cagey about when you got a call from us the first time?
Yeah, so this was during COVID, right? Somewhere in the early parts of 2021. And we were trying to raise funds at that time. And we had conversations with so many people before that. And as you would know it now, that the conversations didn't go very well that time, and we were in the verge of figuring out a way as a company to focus more on our business and to bring down our losses so that we are self-sustainable. So we thought that speaking with newer investors was more a distraction for us. So that was one of the main reasons where we were trying to evade calls from one of the associates who kept continuing to push us towards getting into the conversation. But I have to say today that it was because of his persistent effort that we were able to also come out of that situation.
So, since we started, from the beginning about fundraise and how fundraise is so difficult, it's been now, at least 3 years since that fundraise. How do you guys think about fundraise now? Is it still something that you feel is a necessity, a necessary evil? Or do you feel that you should build it differently without taking, any external capital, or at least VC, angel kind of capital?
I can probably take that one. So for me personally, what I think is not only the money definitely helps, but it's also the access to the entire portfolio and the other set of expertise that the investors bring. So till 2021 or even before the angel round, we were pretty much left to our own devices. We had to figure out things by ourselves. We had to fail and then figure and come out. Today, if I have to work on something, I reach out to a couple of people from the portfolio. I reach out to other founders. It gives a better platform to make better decisions. That's definitely for sure. And the other thing is definitely the money helps you grow. But all of that is conditional on a couple of things. One is it is an industry that needs to be funded. Not every good business needs money. So that anyway, all of the VCs would check that out for us. The other piece is that it needs to be more like fuel to your rocket. We can't be figuring out product market fit and all of that with that money. It will get over really quickly. So assuming I've figured out some amount of product market fit, some amount of, all of my channels, something is working, then the money really helps us grow.
So, once the money came in, like what was it that in your journey that changed significantly?
So for us, one thing was we were able to take certain bold bets, be it in terms of recruiting a senior person, because otherwise we wouldn't have taken such bolder decisions. Because
you hired somebody very senior
immediately after the funding. So we were able to do that. We were able to try out multiple product launches. Many of it failed, one succeeded, and that really helped us in scaling the company to a different level. So the funding really helps us in taking certain bolder bets which we otherwise wouldn't have been able to do. So in that ways, funding is very helpful. Otherwise, we'll always be constrained on the cash that we had, and we will have to continuously figure out in a much slower fashion.
So, I'm sure you guys have been asked this question a lot of times. Why did both of you, husband and wife, decide to start this company together? And now, several years later, how does it work? Does it work?
So I'll leave that to Madhumita regarding how we started together, and the later part I'll take it.
Sure. For us, Indus Valley came from a very personal requirement. When we were setting up our home, we felt that we really needed the kind of products that were inspired by what my party used to use in her kitchen. It needed to be healthy, it needed to be good. But there were no brands, and that's how we ended up here. It was something that bothered me enough to quit my job and get started. Early days, we saw a lot of traction. People without any there was no brand. We were just selling products in the first couple of years, but they saw value in it. They referred it to their friends. They came back. One thing that really hit home for me in the early days is there was a customer called Suma. We went to her apartment and she wanted a couple of things. In a period of the next couple of days, I think we sold close to 1 lakh of products just in that single apartment. We need that 1% who believes in us, and everything else will follow. So we could see a lot of product market fit. We saw that there was a requirement for it, and that kept us rolling. And working together has never been easy. We always find new things about each other, but it's kept it really interesting. One thing that's a plus is that there's an implicit trust. You believe that the person has goodness, or you trust that they are coming from a good place. So that eliminates the risk of questions or challenges that you have in your mind. But then you end up carrying work back home. Even while we're having dinner or anything, that we're going out to a party for a friend's place, this ends up, acha, we should do this, maybe we should consider that. So we've learned to accept it, and that's how we deal with it, I guess.
Yeah. So with respect to working together, the part that Madhumita missed out was she was kind enough to let me join the Indus Valley, and I always saw potential even from outside when she had started a few months before I joined in. So what nobody told us was that there will be no work-life balance, because something or the other keeps coming up, and we will be discussing about work at 12 in the night, in the early morning, even when we are traveling. So it is like switching off is something that is very, very hard with work. And in the initial years, it got very difficult for us, mainly because we were never used to questioning each other from work. It was always that when we worked independently in different organizations, we always used to crib about our bosses, about the work. So some bent out mechanism was there. So here, if I have to give a feedback to Madhumita or vice versa, it was difficult because you have to carry that back to your home as well. So the initial few years was a little bit challenging on that front, but that mutual trust and mutual admiration that we had and still have for each other, that helped us towards understanding that it is coming from a better place. And then today we don't have difficult conversations. When I say something, she's able to understand.
The conversation is on a difficult topic, but we make it a little easier on each other.
Yeah.
But do you give each other critical feedback to each other?
Every single
Archana,
day.
you know me. You know I'm critical all of the time. I don't think this is the question, but yeah, for those who don't me, yeah, we do.
And you're able to handle it, and you're able to accept each other's sort of
100%. I mean, it still hurts some days, but overall we have learned to adapt. And so even if it is a very critical feedback, we try to understand where it is coming from. So once you have that base level of understanding, then it gets progressively more easier.
And you start benefiting from feedback, right? That's in any relationship. So as an investor, you'll give me some feedback and some of that will work. So next time I'll always come back to you for more. So that's a very nice cycle where you benefit from that person's feedback and you learn and you keep growing.
But how did you think about it financially? You know, both of you giving up your jobs. So was there some savings that you guys decided to dip into?
Barely.
Yeah. So the real answer to that question would be that we were stupid enough to really try out something without understanding how much time and effort it will take, and also from a financial perspective. So we had worked for around 3 years before starting Indus Valley post our management education. So we had little bit of savings, not the life-saving kind of savings. So for the first 4-5 years of starting up the company, we were eating into the pool of savings that we had. In fact, after you guys had joined us only, we became net positive. Like the company was
and there was a salary,
a
decent salary. Yeah.
So initially it was very difficult. So we used to eat into the savings that we had only, and post things got better. Then the company started feeding us.
So, you took a financial risk together. How did you guys think about failure? You talked about how that was a tricky moment in the company's journey. So, and you didn't have too much savings. So, did it look as if it was going to fail? And did you guys encourage each other, or one was more down and out and one was more sort of Panglossian about it? How did it work?
I was the one who was almost down and out at that time when somebody from Rukam had reached out to me, because that was the stage we were almost down to the last few months of the funds left in the company. So we had to really figure out, and I was responsible for finances and marketing. So it was the entire burden was on me. So I was not fully confident at that time that I could really turn it around. So that was the most critical phase, and a lot of self-doubts were there. Madhumita was bold enough to say that we will be able to figure out, and I leave it.
Wow.
I always see failure as a comma. So if you have the time wherewithal to take a pause, look at it and fix it, I think we can come out of it. And definitely, personally, maybe if we weren't lucky to have Rukam on the cap table at that point, or if it took longer, then maybe one of us would have had to get a job because we have mouths to feed. But that was something I was at a mind level ready to accept. I said, okay, one of us will pay the bills, the other will figure this out and bring it back to a state where we can sustain it, and then we'll grow it again. So even today when we face hardships, I cry and whine about it, but then I pull up my socks and say, yes, we will solve this as well.
So what is the toughest thing now, with your permission, or maybe you guys should talk about it. I mean, you guys have hit, that magic number in your revenue, which is hard. I mean, to even get to that number is, to my mind, a big achievement. So I'm not saying the number, because if you guys want to say it, please feel free to say it. But what looks hard today? Like, what are the tough bits? Because, I think for a lot of founders who probably will watch this, I think for them, it'll be like, oh, if I could get to that number, then it'll all be like sorted. So.
Yeah. So I would mention that number and start. So
of course you should. You have everything to be proud about that number.
Yeah. So we have crossed 100 crore in annual run rate.
Thank you.
With so many years of hard work, with the entire effort of the team and investors kind of giving us almost a free hand in doing everything that we wanted to try out. So the biggest change that we have, and also the challenge, is that no longer can we be that kind of independent performer. So even earlier we had teams, but they were more at a junior level. So it was more execution focused. I and Madhumita will have ideas, we tell them and they'll go and execute. But today we have people at leadership. So the biggest challenge is now getting the buy-in of the leadership. So if we go and tell them we are planning to do this, there'll be 100 questions around, have you thought about this? Has this worked before for us? For some other place that I used to work with, this did not work out. How will I convince my team? So now the biggest challenge is in getting the buy-in of the leadership team and ensuring that they are fully convinced about the idea that we have, and ensure they execute it with the same passion that it would have been their own idea as well. So that is the biggest challenge that we face.
For me, at this scale, I feel the competition set has changed. No longer are we an unknown entity. A fair amount of the larger legacy players know us. So that means we're being closely watched. So that means we need to be even faster, we need to be even smarter. So that is definitely a challenge. And on the flip side, since the customers are getting to know us better, their expectations on us keep rising, and we have to grow to accommodate them, and that's how we'll keep them happy.
So, you hired a senior person, like we said a short while ago, immediately after the fundraise where both Rukam and DSG came in. And you've been able to retain that person. Like what we've seen in a lot of startups is hiring is always hard, and hiring senior people is even harder, and then retention on top of that. So, is there something that you'd want to say for other founders, about how do you get the hiring right? Do you think you guys got it right?
I don't think we ever get it always right, but we try. But yeah, Jagadish.
So we had to take a risk at that time when we had recruited that senior person, mainly because we were not sure whether this is something that will really fit into the person's aspirations as well, because he has worked largely in bigger organizations, in at least set teams. So here he had to build his entire team. So one thing that really helped us over the last 3 years with the individual was we had one open communication. So even if things don't go well, we tell him why we think it is not working and give him some suggestions. And also the person was looking to do something on his own in terms of achieving certain goals, and he had his aspirations in building a team and scaling to a certain level. So it was a mix of the individual's aspirations and willingness to do certain things, and us also in trusting that individual in delivering whatever he wanted to and support him in any which way.
That's a particular example, but overall we have a process. So from the hiring stage, we have at least 3 to 5 different rounds of interviews. One definitely with anyone on the board. What it does is it sees how interested they are, because it's not easy to go through so many rounds of interviews. And we also do personality tests. I know they're not 100% proof, but it gives you some indication as to where the person is leaning towards. And we give them all the horror stories of all the things that are possible in a startup, because it's no debate they're brilliant people. It's just that will they be a good fit for us? And once they're in, irrespective of whoever team the person belongs to, we handhold them a lot. And I would give it a good...
Meaning the two of you handhold them?
We ensure the team does too, but at their capability level, I think Jagadish and I are more fit to handhold them in setting up the process, hiring the team, and sometimes they might have ideas which we've already done and probably did not work, and we'll walk them through exactly why it did not work. Maybe we got it wrong, or if there's room for improvement. So we are very hands-on when it comes to that. And let's say they're having challenges, we've always acted more like a team member than a founder. So those things help. We see that when we hire new people as well, the process helps them a lot.
So the hand-holding part is not about the individual's capability. What we have generally seen is what works in a larger organization most often than not doesn't work in a startup.
It just doesn't.
So what generally happens is they come in with a lot of experience, which many times become a baggage in a startup. So when they come up with certain ideas, we tell them that, boss, we have tried it and it hasn't worked. It's not that what you're saying doesn't make sense. We know that it is coming from your experience, but in a smaller organizations, the people who are working here, their aspirations are different, their skill sets are different. So we have to adapt and adopt according to that situation. So that's where we generally give more support to them, more from a company point of view.
Got it. Is there any sort of guidance you'd give to, founders who are just in, let's say, a couple of years into building their company on hiring? Because that's so extremely tricky subject for almost all founders. So is there anything any sort of tips, guidelines?
So I'll tell few things that has worked for us. One is that over a period of hiring so many people, one thing that we come to understand is that the final round of interview must compulsorily happen with one of the founders.
Or any one round, if not.
Or if not, at least one round of conversation should happen with the founders till you hire a certain number of people. We say at least till 200 people in the organization, we should have a conversation. And what we generally test at that level is more of the individual's capability to adapt to the organization. So mostly it is the culture fit that we generally look at, because different people have different aspirations, and we try to see if our organization's culture matches with what the individual's
that's
culture
very
is.
important.
So that is what we generally look at, and Madhumita can share a few pointers.
Sure. And another thing that we do in hiring is we rarely hire people who are 100% ready. So we see that they have enormous potential and we feel that they can grow into the role. But there's a little something that they might need to learn here, because otherwise there are so many other companies which are bigger, better than us. There are so many other roles that might pay more, locations that might be more favorable to them. And yet they want to pick us. So there needs to be a little cherry on the top. So if they're 70% there, we hope to handhold them to get 100% there in the next couple of years. That definitely helps. And the other piece is we really sell them on the ownership, because unlike in a large organization where all of your large ideas just don't get executed, here you get to see them getting executed. So what we've also started doing, Archana, is we started to have a peer interview. So if I were to hire a head of operations, I request the, say, offline salesperson to talk with him. So they get to have a colleague's point of view before they consider to join or not. So all of those things help as well.
Wow, that's pretty in-depth, I must say, for a young company to do. This is the moment when you guys can ask me questions, so please fire away.
Sure. I mean, Rukam could have put their money anywhere, but you guys, I mean, us is the second question, but why consumer? Because when we started back in 2016-17, when we'd say consumer, people would politely cut the call, say consumer, no. It wasn't even D2C back then, it was just consumer. So you had the vision, right? So why?
So I don't know about vision, Madhumita. I think what I want to say is that, you know, I have always been a bit of a contrarian in my worldview in general, like in everything that I do or how I think about things. Now, you know, some things are hiding in plain sight. And I think, with all due respect to every investor, I think they tend to overcomplicate some things which are actually very easy. So, you know, like somebody will say, oh, innovation. Now, the truth is, innovation is actually damn hard. Like, it happens like once in many decades. But of course, many businesses get built, right? So, innovation doesn't equate to a large outcome necessarily. Innovation, of course, will lead to, because if it's such an inflection. But, you know, you look at human history, how many times has there been that inflection point of innovation?
Correct.
Right? And it's only when that inflection point of innovation happens that you make that kind of outsized returns. It doesn't happen every day. But as investors, what do human beings need or want? You still are leading your daily lives, right? And in that daily life, what are the various day parts in which we are all consumed? So, to me, it's the most logical thing. But I think investors tend to become very, very complicated. They're like, oh, has the founder filed a patent? I'm like, it doesn't even matter. Because, yeah, patents matter. And of course, that kind of deep thinking matters. But it's very silly to think that a consumer company is not doing deep thinking. So, you know, the question would be, let's say a QSR like a McDonald's, have they given great returns to their investors? The answer is yes.
True.
So where's the deep thinking? It may not be obvious in the product, or maybe obvious even in the product, but it's all how have you taken out the inefficiencies or what is it that the consumer is looking today which the existing legacy guys are not serving. So all of those things, to my mind, lead to investment decisions. But the most important thing for us has been always founders. We back founders first rather than even the idea or the product or the stage of the company even. And somebody who, you know, we had said no to, who I met recently, said to me, asked me the same question. And again I said, founders first. He said, but you said no to me. I was like, oh, I'm so sorry, you know. So the thing is that picking, or when you say you want to back founders first in early stage, there's no real science to it, to be quite honest. It's a little bit of gut. It's about how your interactions go. It's about the sense you get, the vibe you get. And unfortunately, none of this can be templated down to say that why this founder versus that founder. It's just something that you feel just right. And then in your case, of course, you guys were already at a certain revenue, though you were sub 1 crore per month at that time when we had invested, but it looked as if you had figured a lot of things out. The channel seemed clear. I remember I had asked you about shipping and how are you doing, such heavy products. And I remember this very long, but a very clear answer you'd given about shipping, because that is something that could sink your business, right?
Correct.
And you were completely online first, you were completely selling from your website. So the fact that you had figured out the tough bits was what was important for us. But because we come in early, or I would say even a little later, like when we see the journey of a company, there's going to be a lot of imperfections and mistakes along the way. But that doesn't mean that it's not the right investment. True. So that's a very long answer to a short question.
So just a follow up to the answer, a couple of questions from my side. One is specific to us when you had decided to invest in us. As a VC investor, we understand that VCs take so much time before saying a yes, and lot of data they look at, lot of research they do, and that typically takes anything between 4 weeks to sometimes even 6 months. But you decided to go ahead with a yes within a matter of few days, having just a couple of conversations.
And on Zoom, that
on that too.
I mean, that we attribute to COVID.
But that too over a Zoom call. So one is, how did you decide to invest in us? And two is, what was that able to give you some conviction on us, which can probably help other founders?
So, like I said, I think that answer definitely for me was an important answer on how are you shipping, how are you addressing, because I mean it could completely change how a consumer then buys this product. And that time you were primarily cast iron. Imagine shipping cast iron seemed like a daunting task to me, honestly. And the fact that you guys had sorted it out, I think that, and the clarity of the response really mattered. I think the reason we were able to move fast is also the process we follow, because we meet so many companies in a certain sort of category that we think has potential. So we were looking at home in various aspects of home, right? And cooking and cookware was one product line that we were looking at. And what happens is that you start with a thesis as an investor, and then you start researching it, and then you are able to either say that, look, maybe this is the way to solve it, or maybe this is not something that is, no founder seems to have found an answer to it. So that's because we follow that process. Then when you meet the right founders, it becomes very easy to take that decision. Then it doesn't take us that long to really decide. But the work behind it is long and torturous, which you guys didn't see, but that work is really long and torturous. And like I said, I learned this from a very wise investor, that unless and until you meet a lot of founders, you again can't really know how to assess them, because see, it's a punt you're taking on the founder. Category is incidental to some extent to that, right? Or the product. Correct. Or what has happened, because everything flows because the founders thought a certain way. Otherwise, you could have thought a completely different way from the way you thought about this. So when it comes to assessing the founder, you can't assess the founders unless you've seen a lot. And because we've been seeing so much, then when you see the right founders, you think, okay, this is the company we want to back, and that's how we were able to move fast. Having said that, it's not a foolproof method, I also will admit that. But yeah, it helps you to take that decision. But what happens is, if you're convinced about sometimes the category first, then you already, in your head, you already sorted all the TAM question, price point, channel, like you already thought about and you know looked at a lot of information and data. So then those questions are not as germane to my mind. What was more germane specifically in your case, like I said, was the shipping part. I remember we discussed manufacturing. I asked you about manufacturing. Where are you manufacturing? And you know, how does that work? That was important to me. I remember we discussed about, I asked you about design. So that was important, right? And then every company and every founders will have some negatives and positives. As long as the positives outweigh the negatives, you're good to go, basically. In short, it's not that complicated to my mind, you know. Any other questions?
I have one last question. So thanks to you, we've experienced different kinds of wine and different kinds of food. So for those who don't know, Archana is a super person to have a meal with because she always has somewhere interesting to take you. So if you had to have only one glass of wine and one meal for the rest of your life, which one would you pick?
Oh my God. So, you know, it's going to be a bit boring, but I love my own ghar ka khana the most. So if it was one last meal, it'll definitely be...
No, not one last meal. You're just going to eat the same thing again and again for some time.
It'll be my ghar ka khana. I just love the food in my house. And if it was a drink, I could drink a lot of. So I really enjoy drinking champagne, and specifically, there's a brand called Runat Blanc de Blanc, which I really, really, really like that champagne. So, you know, for me, champagne denotes happiness, celebration,
yeah.
and you just can't disassociate from it. Even if you're doing nothing and there's a glass of champagne, you're thinking, oh, there's something happy.
Yeah,
there's a happy thing to it, you know. Sure. And I'm not much of I don't drink too much tea, coffee. I don't drink tea at all. I drink little coffee. So there aren't too many beverages. So champagne is my go-to drink, which we will open for that 100 crore ARR mark.
For sure. You know why I asked the question.
Yeah. Yes. So thank you so much to both of you for doing this, and it's been a real pleasure.
Same.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.